I'm Heather, 25. Standing in the middle of my newly opened Harper Light Studio, I gaze at the crowd. The room is filled with the soft hum of conversations, the click of cameras, and the gentle clinking of champagne glasses. My family is here, and their expressions are a mix of shock and confusion. My father, Mr. Thompson, a 55-year-old corporate tycoon with a sharp, calculating mind and a family background steeped in old money business, narrows his eyes as he surveys the gallery. My mother, Mrs. Thompson, a 52-year-old socialite who is more concerned about appearances and social status, stands beside him, her lips pursed in a tight line. My older brother, Ethan, 28, a finance whiz groomed to take over the family business, looks at me with a puzzled frown. Just then, Mr. Reynolds, the family lawyer in his late 50s, a man of few words but great integrity, steps forward with a champagne flute in his hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, "thank you for joining us tonight at Harper Light Studio, founded by and dedicated to the artistic vision of Heather." A murmur ripples through the crowd. I cast my mind back to that fateful day at the law office. The air in the conference room was thick with tension, like a storm about to break. The walls were made of sleek glass, and the marble floors reflected the cold, harsh light. I walked in wearing my best black dress, my hair neatly straightened to avoid my mother's scathing remarks. My parents were already seated at the head of the table. My father sat back, his posture rigid, like a king on his throne. My mother toyed with a diamond bracelet that had been in the family for generations. Ethan gave me a curt nod, his eyes cold and unfeeling. The room filled quickly with cousins, aunts, and uncles I hadn't seen in years. They all had that same greedy glint in their eyes, like vultures waiting for a carcass. Mr. Reynolds entered precisely at 10 a.m., carrying a thick file under his arm. His face was as calm as a still lake, but I could sense the weight of the documents he held. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice deep and steady. "We're here to honor the last will and testament of Mr. Henry Thompson." He began to read out the bequests. A luxury yacht to Uncle Robert, a vineyard in Napa Valley to Aunt Carol. Ethan was to receive a large share of the family's investment portfolio. Then Mr. Reynolds's eyes landed on me. To Heather Thompson, he paused. "Mr. Thompson leaves the sum of $10. The room fell silent for a split second and then erupted into laughter. My father let out a loud snort. "Guess that's what happens when you chase silly dreams," he sneered. My mother covered her mouth with her hand, but I could see the amusement in her eyes. Ethan just shook his head, a smirk on his face. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, and my hands trembled. I wanted to run out of the room, but I held my ground. I swallowed hard and nodded, forcing out a quiet "understood." But then, Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat.
"There is one more thing," he said.
The room fell dead silent. "There is a private addendum, meant only for Heather." My father frowned. "What do you mean, private?" he demanded. My mother shifted in her seat, her eyes narrowing. Mr. Reynolds didn't flinch. "Mr. Thompson left a sealed envelope in my custody. It contains instructions and is to be read in private. Heather, would you mind stepping into the adjoining office?" I stood up slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. As I followed Mr. Reynolds down the hallway, I could feel the stares of my family on my back, like needles pricking my skin. In the smaller office, the air was cooler. A thick, cream-colored envelope sat on the desk, with my name written in Mr. Thompson's elegant cursive. I picked it up with both hands. It felt heavier than it looked. "Did you read it?" I asked Mr. Reynolds, my voice barely above a whisper. He shook his head. "I was instructed not to, but I was told to give you time. Take as long as you need." With that, he left the room. I sat down and ran my fingers along the wax seal, which was embossed with a small camera symbol. Taking a deep breath, I cracked it open. The first words made my breath catch. "My dearest Heather," it began. "I apologize for the scene in the main room. I needed them to show you who they really are when they thought you were powerless." As I read on, I discovered that the $10 inheritance was a decoy. I was the sole beneficiary of the Thompson Creative Trust, which held more value than all the other bequests combined. Along with it came ownership of this very studio and a penthouse apartment downtown. I remembered my grandfather, Mr. Henry Thompson. He was a 78-year-old man with a quiet strength and a love for art that he kept hidden beneath his business-like exterior. He was the only one who never judged me for my passion for photography. 3 weeks before he passed, I had a chance encounter with him. I had just finished a photo shoot downtown and found myself standing in front of his mansion. I rang the bell, not expecting an answer. To my surprise, he opened the door himself. He looked thinner, his step slower, but his eyes were still as sharp as ever. "Well," he said with a faint smile, "a Thompson who actually knocks." He invited me in, and the house smelled of mahogany and old books. We sat in his study, surrounded by leather chairs and paintings of our ancestors. He asked me about my photography. "What are you working on now?" he said, pouring me a cup of tea from a silver teapot. "A series called Forgotten Lives. I'm photographing people who have been overlooked by society," I replied. He looked at me for a long time. "That's dangerous work," he said. "Why?" I asked. "Because you're telling the truth, and truth always costs more than people think." As I got up to leave, he reached into a drawer and pulled out an old film camera. "This was mine," he said, placing it in my hands. "Before I built this empire, I carried this everywhere. Don't let them take your eye, Heather. That's your gift and your rebellion." After reading the letter from my grandfather, I decided to keep my secret for a while. I walked back into the conference room, the letter folded neatly in my purse. My family was still laughing and making snide remarks. "Guess she'll frame that $10 check," my father said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Ethan looked at me and asked, "Everything all right?" But there was no concern in his voice, just curiosity. "Just needed a moment," I replied calmly. Over the next few days, I worked quietly with Mr. Reynolds to transfer control of the trust. I visited the penthouse on Beacon Street. It was a haven of light and space, filled with my photographs that my grandfather had secretly collected over the years. 6 weeks later, I sent out the invitations to the gallery opening. I waited for my family's responses. Ethan RSVP'd immediately, probably hoping to find out what I was up to. My mother texted a non-committal "we'll see." My father said nothing, but I knew he would come out of sheer curiosity. Now, in the studio, as Mr. Reynolds continues his speech, Mr. Thompson believed that legacy should follow merit, not lineage. Heather's unwavering pursuit of creative truth, despite rejection and resistance, earned her not only his admiration, but his full support. The applause is thunderous. My family stands there, their faces pale. My mother's eyes are wide with disbelief, and my father's fists are clenched at his sides. Ethan looks like he's been punched in the gut. I step forward and say, "You never asked what I was building. You only asked why I didn't follow your path. That $10? You thought it was the full measure of my worth, but it was a test. And now I've passed it." In the weeks that follow, I start to expand the studio into a residency program for young artists. I use the Trust's funds to support emerging photographers from underprivileged communities. A few months later, a young artist named Lily knocks on my office door. She holds a worn-out camera in her hand, her eyes full of hope and uncertainty. "Do you ever worry that people will only see your money, not your work?" she asks. I smile gently. "All the time, but it only matters if I believe it. If you lead with your vision, the rest follows." She nods slowly, and I know she's filing that away for future moment of doubt. On the 1-year anniversary of my grandfather's passing, Mr. Reynolds delivers a final letter. "Wealth is not what you hold, but what you choose to build. You were always the legacy I believed in, Heather. You just had to believe it, too." That night, I light a candle in the studio and leave the doors unlocked. Strangers wander in, looking at my photographs and the framed $10 check. They may not know the full story, but they can feel the passion and the truth behind my work. My legacy doesn't need explanation. It just needs to be lived.